Once we made the first million, it was quite simple and easier to make the following. We grew from just the one company to 16 different companies in 6 different states. Very, very happy to announce that we've hired over 350 Ward 8 residents. 100 of them were returning citizens and counting. No one ever did it alone. So when I hear someone say, I did it by myself, I'm leery, because the first thing they have to remember is that God made it possible for them to breathe. Counsel doesn't have to always come from the richest person. Um, I do believe and did learn that if I wanted to become a millionaire, I didn't need to take counsel from a broke person.
Gentlemen, Mr. Fred Hill of Gotta Go Now, a powerhouse company in the Washington, D.C. area. Welcome, Fred. How's it going?
Thank you. I'm doing really well. Thank you. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Fred, can you tell us specifically what is it that you do and how do you do it?
Well, 16 years ago, we opened a portable sanitation company here in Washington, D.C. That started out with just 3 porta potties. It's grown to over 2,500 now. And then a few years ago, we acquired a few rental companies, small rental companies that provided tables, tents, chairs, generators, lighting. We also have services that include roll-off dumpsters, fencing, barricades, and a host of other support services that go into the low levels of demolition on construction projects. So as I said, this has been 16 years building it to this point, but very, very happy to announce that we've hired over 350 Ward 8 residents. 100 of them were returning citizens and counting right now, because we still have hirees coming on. I'm also proud to announce that we're one of the few companies that through a pandemic are still able to stay in business and provide living wage jobs as opposed to minimum wage jobs with our efforts. Thank you.
Wow, wow, that is certainly impressive. It's a pleasure to be on the line with you. Brother, I'm extremely proud of you and what you've done, what you stand for, and what you're doing, okay?
Thank you.
I want to know, can you take us through a timeline? Because what I'm interested in doing here on Chronicles of Ambition is showcasing just how one can be effective and what journeys do they take? What has took place or taken place throughout their lifetime that allows for them to become who they are. And so no matter where you are in life, of course, as many of us identify where we are and we understand our circumstances, and sometimes that's a limitation. I want you to take us through where you've been, what all you've been exposed to, your experiences. How did you start on your entrepreneurial path, and how did that lead to a political path as well?
Well, that's a really, really good question, because the first thing that comes to mind is, where did I get the idea to want to be in business? And that was when I was in high school, actually in junior high school. I spent my entire junior high and high school career wearing 2- and 3-piece suits to school with the attaché case every day. And what inspired me was my grandfather, my father, and then there were other uncles who were all businessmen. And they did not wear suits and carry attaché cases. They were auto mechanics. They were diesel mechanics. They were brick masons, roofers, built homes and such. And what I didn't want to do is, I didn't want to work as hard as I saw them working. So I began to wear the suits and carry the briefcases like I wanted to be seen later on. And as I got further into my pursuit of what I needed to do to be in business, then I found out that business was totally different than what I thought it was about when I was a youngster. And I found that there was a need for service-related businesses far more than anything. And that's what my grandparents and my father and uncles were doing. They were providing services. You can do it through products as well, but the service industry is one that seemed to surpass any downfall that could come, like what we have with the pandemic right now. And The portable sanitation business came out as a part-time hustle, quite honestly. I was flipping houses, and I did not like what the other companies were bringing me as far as the porta potties. The servicing was horrible, so I bought 3 of my own units for the properties that I was renovating. And one day there was a lady next door who said, "I have a birthday party coming up. Could you rent me your porta potty for the weekend?" And I said, "You've been a good neighbor, so I'll have it cleaned up and you can use it, no problem." 3 weeks later, she needed it again. And then about a week later, she began to tell people in the church about the the cleanest porta potty around. And I then decided to order 10 of them, and then we ordered 75. And like I said, now we have over 2,500. But the things that also sparked me to really push in that business is because I recognized at that time, it was an $800 billion industry. And I figured if I could just carve out a little of that 800 billion, I would be okay. I also recognized that that business did not require a college degree. It did not require a high school diploma. And a lot of the people who I had been in contact with needed employment. Our returning citizen population, as well as those who didn't finish high school. And it was a simple job to do if you could stomach the smell, if you get what I mean. But
right, I know.
it turned out to be a winner all the way around. We set up a 26-point cleaning process for my units, and we quickly began to get recognized in the Washington, D.C. area as having the cleanest portable sanitation units around. In 2012, we were rated, and I started out in 2005, but in 2012, we were rated the fastest growing portable sanitation company by the industry leading editorial Pumper magazine. Just a few years ago, I was voted in as the first African American to sit on the International Board of Directors for the portable sanitation industry after its 42 years of existence. And that was not a paid position. That was one only to be voted in by your peers. And I served in that capacity for 1 year, and then decided I would step down because business took a different turn and was getting, we grew from just the one company to 16 different companies in 6 different states. And as I said, we provide those services from roll-off dumpsters to fencing, tables, tents, and chairs, generators, lighting, portable sanitation, luxury trailers, shower trailers. All of these are things that we provide right now. And I'm just happy that it's weathered the storm, so to speak. Even though we did have some reduction, as any other business did, we are still in operation.
Wow. And you said 16, how many states?
6 different states right now.
That's amazing.
16 different businesses in 6 different states.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's hefty, man. That's hefty. Can you give us, you've given us an idea of where and how you grew up. And I'm just curious, was it witnessing your family members and neighbors who were going to work? What inspired you to be able to be a risk taker? Because it's hard for one to transition fully into depending on themselves, because we all hear the mantra, do for self, but many of us have a hard time actually believing that we can do it for ourselves. So what is it that made you believe in order to take that risk to jump out there and attain all that you have with regard to entrepreneurial success?
Well, it's definitely my family. As I said, my father and my grandfather, uncles, all the men in my life were business owners. They were students of their craft, and they, as I got older, understood they kind of wrote their own ticket, so to speak. They had to work hard. I mean, everyone has a boss, even when you're in business. Your customers become your boss. So
that's right.
That wasn't something that was trying to get around. But I'll tell you, the thing that really began to interest me was when I got into sales at a young age. Sales seemed to be the only profession that offered the kinds of income that leveled or rallied against doctors, lawyers, and other professionals. Um, and I figured, let me try my hand in sales. And so when I began to study Robert Kiyosaki and Zig Ziglar and Napoleon Hill and
Mm.
Les, oh man, there's so many different
Les Brown.
motivational speakers. Les Brown,
Les
thank you,
Brown.
Les,
My man.
Les
My
Brown.
man.
Yeah. These were the people who kind of gave me a basis to dream bigger than what I was doing. I mean, I watched my family work harder, but then there would seem to be a piece that was missing. And once I began to gain the education of how to sell, things really took off like a rocket. And then I began to realize, I can take the knowledge I have from sales and the desire that I want to have to be in business, find me a product and go to work. And that's what happened. It just took off like that. Now, delivering the service was also key because, as I stated earlier, a lot of the companies in the portable sanitation industry in Washington, D.C. did not satisfy my liking. And we decided to go after some of the contracts when we began to get moving. And within a short period of time, we were able to get recognized as the company to beat. And so now it is grown into where we've received numerous requests for purchasing the company, that of which I haven't decided to do because they're not coming with enough commas and zeros right now, quite honestly. So we can keep this going. My daughter is next in line. She is the president of the company. My wife is also in the company with us too. So my grandkids are involved. They also are happy that they can look forward to the legacy being transferred to them. So this is what this dream has become now, a vehicle to the future for my family.
Gotcha. And so you've also considered succession planning, and
Yes.
and just for folks out there, so that you know, succession planning is simply preparing the business to either be taken over by someone else via, if you would like to sell the company, or empowering your employees to step up to the helm and run the company after you step down. And so one of the things that we often miss out on, especially in our community, especially among African Americans, is proper succession planning. Far too often, our companies close their doors, they close down. If you weren't going to have your employees step up, if you didn't have a daughter or a son or a niece or a nephew or a cousin or someone, an employee who you would like to empower to keep the business running, you can sell it. There are all types of ways where you can gain something instead of nothing and leaving nothing behind, so to speak. So I'm very glad that you've thought of that. Who actually brought that to your attention with regard to how to properly succession plan and empower, in this case, your employees and family members?
Well, it's always been a dream to be able to have a legacy to pass on. But just knowing how to do it and how to do it correctly was what I was lacking. So there were organizations such as Goldman Sachs, who I was a graduate of their top 100 small businesses, recognized about 4 years ago as one of the top Goldman Sachs top 100 small businesses. And in that extensive training, it was a very rigorous training process for about 6 months out of Boston. We did portions online, but we also had to go to Boston to do some classes as well. But it was in that training that I gained the understanding of how to plan an exit strategy when you're in business, be it either for sale or transfer, and the proper way to do it. And that's what we have been working on for the last few years, because I knew that there was something else I wanted to do, but I just didn't know what it was at the time, and just begin to set things in place. Because one of the things that we do quite often forget is that what happens when we die, what happens when we expire, and that's a forced exit out of the business. And so we begin to put things in place that no matter what, this business has to run if I'm not here. So there were days that I would have exercises, weeks And now it's grown into months because my latest target that I'm running for city council here in Washington, D.C., and getting into the politics game, we began to set up that training phase of where I had absolutely no involvement, direct involvement with the business for roughly right now the last 6 months. So in February, when I decided to run for city council seat, I began to pull myself back, and that was purposeful because I know that once I get into the council seat, I want to be fully focused on what's in front of me as opposed to trying to manage the two. I have some wonderful managers and working along with me in the different businesses. So I'm happy to have developed the relationships with qualified and competent people. And then systems. Systems are the biggest thing that a lot of small businesses miss out on because it is truly systems that are easily repeated than people. And we teach the system, and that way, if anyone needs to fall out, you put someone else back in that spot and the machine keeps running.
Gotcha. And I want to delve into your political awakening.
Yeah.
And I want to discuss a few things first, just so that we can get a really good sense of how you tend to craft and curate those machines that you create. Okay. And so in going into that, and just to cover that one more time, because I think it's important for folks to understand the breadth of the operations and the managerial skill in order to be productive and efficient. How many employees do you carry? And of course, we know that things fluctuate throughout the year. What's the range of employees that you carry and your company manages throughout the year?
Throughout the year, roughly about 80 employees. Right now, because of the pandemic, that has been reduced tremendously because some services or clients that we once had have closed down. But on average, roughly about 80 employees a year. And then during the summer months, there are probably about 200 part-timers. And they can't keep the part-time position because their work is seasonal. So they may work a lot of hours during the summer months from, say, the end of April through the end of September. And that's why they're still only considered part-timers at that time because the rest of the time they're out doing other things. But when that is in full swing, we could have anywhere from 150 to 200 employees working.
Wow. So just to be very clear, that's a lot of mortgages being paid, rent
Absolutely.
being paid, daycare bills being paid, food on the table. And this is what I really get to with regard to being able to do for self. And we all know small businesses employ the majority of people in this country, okay?
Yep.
And to be able to manage an operation like that for so long, I just give kudos to you in being that productive. One of the reasons it's a pleasure to know you and also have you on the show today, okay?
Thank you.
Now, to kind of dive into that just a little bit more, can you tell me about your philosophy when you're building a team? And I want to kind of get into, what exactly is it that you look for in people? And how are you able to get to inspire them? Because of course, we all know in order to get the best out of an employee, you have to inspire them. How are you able to inspire them to give you their best?
I'll start with where the idea and understanding came from. One of my business mentors taught me a long time ago. I would go into his place of business to purchase products that I needed for my business. And repeatedly, I would see him just about every morning. And one day he pulled me to the side and he said, Freddie, you're different. You're not like the other boys, is what he used to say. He was from New York. And he used to say, you're not like the other boys. I want to show you something. And at that time, I had a landscaping business. And he said, I need to teach you how you run the business, but you're not the one also cutting the grass every day. You need to learn how to manage the business. And And he said, the key to what I'm going to show you is that you hire the people who have the knowledge and you hold them accountable. And it was difficult for me at first because the greatest fear that I had the entire time I'd been in business early in my early years was not meeting a payroll. I never wanted to put someone in the position of what I experienced with some of the companies that I had worked for. And it just never set me in a position where I was openly bringing someone on just for the sake of filling a spot, but not having the money to ensure that they would get paid on payday. But as those training sessions with him and others went on, I began to see the value in freeing up my time so that I could be that salesman for the company and develop and acquire more contracts and train the people that we had in place to follow the system. And what I used to say to everyone, if we're making a sandwich, make my sandwich the same way every time. Don't put any extra pickles, no extra mustard, no extra cheese. Just do it just like I say, do it, and we'll be fine. That way, the contract that I have with the client is upheld throughout the service period because they see the same thing that I started with them continues no matter who's sitting in the place. And that's why systems are so important. Recognizing who were the leaders was the next thing that I had to do because there were some people who came there initially just for a job, but may not have known they had leadership potential. And then, of course, monetary influence is one thing that can give some people hope, but there's also the daily recognition of how they are important to the success of the business. I learned many years ago that no person does it alone. Of all the successful businessmen and women that I studied over the years, no one ever did it alone. So when I hear someone say, I did it by myself, I'm leery because the first thing they have to remember is that God made it possible for them to breathe.
That's right.
So how dare you leave out that very important component? But then when you look at what's around you, there's another thing that came to mind, and that two is better than one. Ecclesiastes says two is better than one. And so when you have more than one person or three or four that can duplicate the system, it makes it easier for those responsibilities to be assigned and then managed from that point on. And it just became not an easy thing to do, but a necessary component of being able to expand the business. Bringing in the right accountants, bringing in the right attorneys, bringing in the right admin staff, bookkeeper, insurance companies, so many different support systems that are necessary to business growth. I know that initially when I started out as the only employee in the company wearing all of those hats I just named, it became quite difficult when we delivered a really, really good service at a really good price. And we began to start getting more people asking for that. And learning how to turn over some of those responsibilities, yet manage that of what you turned over was key. And I would say that has been the stepping stone throughout each business that we opened. Once we made the first million, it was quite simple and easier to make the following, but it was only because we had a system in place that spelled out every concern whenever anything was presented. And we having tight contracts when you go out to do the work, and having having inspections on the work that has been done. Some people just miss out on maintaining a good customer base because you don't follow up with the customer to see how the service has been or what areas of service they need. One of the reasons that we got in and we expanded from portable sanitation into roll-off dumpsters and fencing and then ultimately some of the other services like the event rental equipment that we started doing, tables, tents, and chairs, was because we developed a relationship with our clients and then began to ask them what other services they need. And if we could find something that was within the spectrum of what we could produce, then we did some real strong evaluations on it. I went into study, and prayer, and decided that there was something that we could do. It was also another means to providing employment for people who needed it. And in my area and in Washington, D.C., we have the highest unemployment rate, and I wanted to do everything I could to reduce that.
And just to be clear, so that everyone knows, because I have seen it, you're not merely taking, or your staff isn't taking resumes from Indeed and running credit reports. You're hiring returning citizens as well as everyone else. And that's important to hone in on. What caused you to see that need and overcome the other hurdles that so many employers tend to just say, hey, I can't do that. I won't give these people a chance. What allows for you to do that and be successful hiring these men and women when they come back home?
Mm-hmm. Well, number one, I'm a returning citizen myself. And one of the things that I saw when I was incarcerated is that there were people who were going home and coming back repeatedly. And it bothered me that you just went home 2 weeks ago. What are you doing back in here? And overwhelmingly, it was the response of, I couldn't get a job. And so I was forced to do some things that got me caught again. And when I got out, I decided I was going to create a platform whereby that person would have an opportunity for those who maintain the payroll for, would have a guaranteed position for 60 days. That way they could gain job experience and job reliability. And then I began to match them or marry them up with other companies if I could not keep them myself. And that way they had job history too. So that was one of the biggest barriers for returning citizens. They had been away for so long and hadn't worked. And here's now is an opportunity that we created. That I just tried to do within my community. And then it became a thing of where one day I got a call from someone in North Carolina, and then I got a call from someone in Georgia, and then Florida, and then California, New Jersey. And now it's growing to be a network of people that we do interviews out of various prisons upon their close time of release, interview them, and then try to get them connected to someone in our network right now. And that's been going on for 20 years. But then there's the other part of having them recognize you've paid your debt to society. And my position was if you paid your debt to society, now it's time for you to start living. And so reminding someone of what they did yesterday is not my best belief of what we should be doing. And my interviews are very short. And they go just exactly like this. We come in, you sit down, I sit down, I give you my name, you give me yours. And then I say, if you don't show me your past, I don't care about it. Mm-hmm. And then they say, and that's it. And I say, and that's it, let's go to work. So in about 20 seconds, that's the interview. There are some extended interviews that will have to take place for those who are going into the military bases or high clearance areas. But those we know we would not try to send someone who has a record, because we already know that would be shut down. However, what I have been successful in doing is we've established relationships with attorneys that pro bono will help out a returning citizen, have their records expunged, have their records cleaned up so that they can gain access to that employment that is needed in the military bases and high clearance areas. So these are things that, are not shared with the returning citizens as often as they should. Correct. Or the hand leading into how do you set yourself up for a better future. But one of the things that I had, if you say, there's always something good and something bad. But when I was incarcerated, my cellmate happened to be a person who's a senator now, and I won't say it, but he was the one who shared with me, the moment you get out of here, within the first 30 days, you need to get your record expunged, because after 30 days, it's impossible to do it. Mm-hmm. And when I began to study on what that was about, it showed me that this is how so many people who had created horrible crimes, much worse than what I did, and they ended up becoming high-ranking officials in government. They became um, so, high-powered business owners, these kinds of things that you just figure wouldn't allow them to be in those
That's right.
positions because they knew what to do when they got out.
Mm-hmm.
And I took that counsel, did exactly that, and then went to work after that. And just, one of the things that I remember most on my final walk out of the hallway of that facility was that I looked at the marshal that was escorting me out, and as he was saying, "Man, you've been a model inmate." And I said, "Well, I don't want to be a model inmate. I want to be a model citizen."
That's right.
So now it's time for me to turn around. But I said, "I promise you, you ain't never gonna see me here again." And I run into him often. I run into him right now often because, again, that's part of that network now that we've developed to support our returning citizens when they come home.
Hmm. So I think a bit of this may be karma. When you hire someone, you actually prepare them and give them not only a foot up while they're with you, but give them a leg up after they may transition away and leave your company. And so,
Yeah, we have one of the greatest stories that I share often is that there was one young fellow who had come home from being incarcerated for 8 years, and I hired him. He was with me on a construction site, and each time we would get to the construction site, he would disappear, and it was only the construction site. And we might have 15 or 20 portable units there to service, but I'd have to go looking for him. But every time I'd find him, he would be watching a welder. And I used to counsel him on the, "Hey, young fellow, you can't watch that light, man. It'll make you go blind, da 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 da," And he was also someone who never really spoke the whole day we would be in the truck. He'd say good morning and then have a good day. I'll see you tomorrow. But never really much conversation throughout the day. And one day I just asked him, as opposed to getting on him or reprimanding him for disappearing each time we get to a construction site, I said, what is it about the welding? What is it about the blue light? And for the first time, he started speaking for almost 30 minutes straight. I just think it's so fantastic that you can take two pieces of steel, heat them up, and build a roof. And he just kept going.
uh-huh.
And I recognized that was his passion. So I contacted a friend of mine who had a welding school and asked him if he had any room. At that time, he did not. His roster was full. A couple of days later, he contacted me to say that one of the persons canceled and he could put the person in. And he said, but it might take him some time to get his financial aid in place. How fast can he get over here? I said, don't worry about his financial aid. I'm going to pay for it. And we got him into the training.
Mm-hmm.
And he went through the 9-month training. He came out, got a job welding, and then he decided he wanted to move to Atlanta. And he moved to Atlanta. He got connected with a pretty young lady who later became his wife. They now have children. And he started his own welding company for the last 7 years now. He's been in business with his own employees, sharing the business model that I taught him when we were together here. So it's about not having someone as an employee for life, because I also promote entrepreneurship to everyone who has an ear for it. Some of us don't want to be business owners. But there are those who recognize they would be a better suit to their family, their community, by being more in charge and deciding what they could do as a business owner as opposed to an employee.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
And that has been one of the most fulfilling pieces.
And also it's important to point out, of course, and I think that especially as you come from our community here, we often, sometimes I find that people are not willing to give that helping hand, though all that they have, they owe to their circumstances and to their relationships and their communities, their experiences. but they aren't willing to look at what they've gone through themselves and try to help out others who are in the same types of situations. And so even if we're discussing returning citizens, it's the most important thing to point out is, of course, the FBI crime statistics say it all in terms of how frequently the overall population is arrested and how frequently they're actually convicted. And so due to our over-policing, due to our extra sentencing and the conviction rate, of course, we have to take a really, really good look. A really keen eye has to be placed on, hey, listen, these are people like everyone else. They're just as bright, brilliant, capable, capable entrepreneurs, capable CFOs, capable CEOs, capable business partners, and everything else. And they have to be treated fairly and equally. And so I'm thankful that you were able to do that. Thank you for that, sir, throughout your entrepreneurial endeavors. Okay. The next question I want to take you to, Fred, is, with regard to, what you've experienced and all that you've gone through, if you were to have I always ask folks, if you had one superpower, what would it be, right? Let's say that yours was time travel, okay? If you were to go back and tell yourself something, let's say, I don't know, 20, 30 years ago, that would have shortcutted you to success, what would you have told yourself? And more specifically, we're looking at where you may have had some waste in times of time, resources, and effort, and where should that energy or those finances have been placed in order to express your success?
I think that the first thing that comes to mind is financial literacy. That was a part that, as a young man, I didn't understand saving. Quite honestly, it seemed to be work. I can get this money as mine. I can go spend it on whatever I want to spend it on. But then, as time went on and later on in life, I realized that preparing for the future should have always been something taught. And that's not to say that my grandparents and parents didn't try to do that. I was just a little harder headed than the average person, and those are the things that I think held me back a little longer by not being a student of the elders, because there are people who did try to give counsel as to how to be a better person. I just did not relate that to being a component needed for me to be successful. Another part is understanding that counsel doesn't have to always come from the richest person. I do believe and did learn that if I wanted to become a millionaire, I didn't need to take counsel from a broke person. I understood that.
Amen.
But there were messages from a lot of people, from the people on the street, the homeless man that counseled me every day when I saw him come through to pick up my breakfast, who ultimately became one of our employees and managers. It is being open for counsel that can come from anybody is the only thing that I did not do early in life. It was what I would say when I joined the military. I learned I was fortunate enough to be a person who touched ground of every continent. I traveled to every continent, and I got a chance to taste the culture of different people all over the world. So it helped remove the eye of racism, that of which was pounded in the United States, but not living wide open in a lot of other countries. And I got a chance to evaluate people as for who they are and understand that environment had a lot to do with who these people were at the same time, because someone who lives in Alaska doesn't do things day to day based on the same things as somebody who lives in Hawaii. Someone who lives in Russia doesn't do it the same way as someone who lives in Australia or Thailand or any other Asian continent. And once I began to tie that environment operation into who we are as people some days and how we had to prepare, I began to be a lot more open to other means of the travel to success. It was interesting when I was in Alaska, there was a season whereby the entire area was only drilled down on being near the streams that when the rainbow trout or brown trout were moving, it seemed to be the whole area was only focused on catching fish. But because of that, that was the largest income earner, revenue stream that this area had. And it required everyone to be on board. So it taught me team involvement and how, again, no one does it alone. In Africa, the same thing. Australia, the mining season was the same way. It was really eye-opening to see so many people come together, no matter the differences they had weeks before. But when the mining season came in, it was time for all of us to get down and get dirty. So that also taught me, how to be prepared and set aside any of the differences. Right now in my companies, some people ask that question: how do you manage so many different attitudes and people and differences? And that's because I've learned to keep my eye on the prize. We're all going to have our own different understandings of how we should do things. But again, that system that I talked about earlier has to remain the focal point. And if what you do fits within the system operation, then I don't interfere with it. Someone comes to work and they're a few minutes late, I don't like it because I understand some things they may not. The schedule requires, the contract requires us to be on a site or involved with service at a certain time. So I'm big on time and delivery.
Me too.
However, I might be that because of your other circumstances in life, such as taking your kids to the daycare or taking them to school or picking them up early or having an elder family member that you have to take care of, maybe this position is not best suited for you, but let's find something else that can do, or hire two people that can, you find two people that can't put in a full-time opportunity and give the morning shift to one and the afternoon shift to the other. That is work also. So it's not always my way or the highway. We just try to find ways to manage and keep the people connected. And I think that's been a great key to our success.
Spoken like a true manager of the people. I myself have had and have stories of having to work with employees. Of course, everyone has their pros, everyone has their deficiencies. And so it's really an art, not a science. And of course, being able to scale that and impart that successful management style onto others has certainly been one of the hurdles that I've faced just throughout my own journeys and business endeavors as well. So I certainly understand where you're coming from there. I'd like to segue just how all of this has brought you to want to participate on a much a broader level within your community. And right now, can you tell us the position that you're running for and also what you would like to bring to the constituents in that particular area?
Thank you. I am currently running for the DC City Council position of the Ward 8 sector of Washington, D.C. And what led me to realize first that I had what it needed, had what it would take to be successful, in that position, was my military background and my business background combined. While in the military, I came to understand the importance of tact and operation and security. When I got into business, I came to understand how to massage the needs of the people and yet still be able to deliver the product that they needed from the client perspective as well as the employee. But the thing that really triggered me to run for office is because I was, for the last 15 years, very much involved in council hearings, giving regular testimony in support of any small business initiative. As being an entrepreneur, the thing that really bothered me with local government was that there were not enough small businesses included in government contract opportunities. And as I began to dissect what I was experiencing with my own business going after contracts, I unfolded thousands of companies, small business, local small businesses that were disenfranchised, stepped over, not included in these opportunities, and began to be a sacrificial lamb, if you will, for that population, because oftentimes I found that many of the small business owners were afraid to either speak up or did not have the finance to fight or the understanding of how to fight. And, as a result of being out there on the front line continuously, it brought me to remember why I had such a diverse line of business and in more than one state. I learned a lesson from my grandfather many, many years ago. And when I was young, I didn't understand what he was saying, but he said it to me repeatedly. He said, "Fred Jr., you're a poor rat if you only got one hole to crawl in." And I could never really understand, and not being man enough at a young age to ask him, "Granddaddy, what do you mean?" Mm-hmm. I later learned when I was about 14 or 15 years old that what he was talking about and teaching me about was diversification. Mm-hmm. And when I came to understand that if I can't get it over here, I can go over here and get it, or I can try over there and get it. And we broadened our view from fishing with a line to fishing with a net. And that brought in much more opportunity. It gave me some opportunities that not only that I decided to keep all the fish, but I had some fish to give away to some other people. And that diversification was key to our success. And that also put me in a position now that realizing that the council seat was going to require, from what I've seen, that needs to be drilled down on and the focus that's going to be needed. That diversification set me into a place where bringing in, again, the right managers to support the business, the current business right now. I have not had to be involved in my business ventures for the last 6 months. Excellent. And focused on campaigning and fighting for the people and just giving a true understanding of what caused me to do this, because I made this decision 2 days before the deadline to file back in February during the primaries. And that was during the Democratic primaries. Primary time to promote the candidacy, the campaign, and get people aware of who I am and what I've been doing in the community. And some people say, "Well, I never really heard of you before." And I said, "That's okay. We just travel in different circles. It doesn't mean that I haven't been involved in my community. It's just I've been involved in the community directly around me." And once they begin to see that, but they also begin to see that I've had, through my discussion and introduction to many people in the ward, my ability to bring people together. My military background taught having ground troops, understanding the order of where the orders come from and respecting those orders, carrying out your responsibility in your sector so that the next people can do what they need to do. And I saw that in Washington, D.C., in Ward 8, there's a group called the ANC Commissioners, Area Neighborhood Commissioners. Mm-hmm. And the ANCs, to me, serve as the ground troops of Ward 8. Those are the people who, within the different sectors of the ward, have a pulse for what's going on in their direct community. I also found out that previous candidates and the incumbent had not had meetings with ANCs. And I thought that to be quite disturbing that these being the ground troops not be included in the process of governance and politics. We were missing a key component of the success of the war. And this is one of the things that helped me realize this is maybe why we have the highest unemployment rate, the highest poverty rate, the highest crime rate, lowest medical standards or stats, and decided that with my experience in military and business, that I could do the same thing with the ANC commissioners that I do with my managers in my business right now. We have regular meetings, and with those regular meetings, those managers bring the concerns from the field, from their staff. Mm-hmm. And we come back together and we put together a plan to satisfy and repair the needs of the people as well as the company. And I intend to bring that experience right to the council to put it to work. We have a need for a level 2 hospital that has not been addressed. There is a level 3 hospital that is proposed to be done by 2024, but we don't need a level 3. We need a level 2, and that's a full service inpatient ambulatory trauma care unit with surgeons that can provide any emergency service needed. We also have the need for vocational trades to be put back into our public school system. Instead of telling our children now that they have to wait until they graduate that they can get into a trade facility or have a GED. We need to show the examples of what professions are available, what careers are available to our young people at early ages so that they can begin to dream. I remember myself, as I was telling you, I dreamed of being a business person when I was in high school and during high school. And it was because of what I saw around me that sparked that interest. But a lot of our kids in Ward 8 right now don't have that. They don't have the examples of the barber who has a successful business that has put a few children through college. That's a living wage career. Mm-hmm. They don't have the examples of the police officer, the example of the school teacher, the college educator, being around, because those ideas of what one can be have been kind of stripped away or only left to those who inquire about it. And I'll be honest with you, when I was going to school, I didn't want to go to school for English, math, or geography. I only went to school for auto mechanics. But I had to deal with the others because I couldn't go to auto mechanics unless I fulfilled the requirement. But after getting into auto mechanics, I realized very soon that I needed English to learn how to communicate to my customers of the cars that I wanted to work on. Mm-hmm. I needed math to learn how to calculate the miles per gallon of that vehicle that I was working on. Geography taught me how to get to them to deliver or pick up the vehicle that was going to be needed repaired. But geography did one other thing. It showed me a globe. And that was something that I hadn't seen before. It showed me the opportunity that the world is vast and all therein. And that when I saw that there were spaces of water in between the next continent, I wondered what it really looked like. And that sparked me to get into the United States Air Force. That's how I got into being able to touch the soil of every continent in the world. And it was rewarding enough also, as I said before, to learn other people's culture, learn how they practice their God, learn how they understand finance and financial literacy, and see what it was that maybe I could take from them and put into the ideas of what I wanted to see. And so far, I think it's been really, really good.
So let me get this straight. And I want to touch on two things here. Within government, you see, within the city, within Washington, D.C., and you spoke on the ANCs throughout the ward, and you see that there could be the organization of all of the ANCs and the office of the council member, where everything can work in tandem to push through certain initiatives and agendas in a very coordinated fashion, similar to how other organizations are able to run and move with information or initiatives efficiently.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. It is what I've seen I come to recognize it clear as day.
Hmm.
It's been one of the most important but missing components
Hmm.
uh, of this ward. And when I found out that the incumbent had not really engaged the ANCs, as I said before, those are the ground troops.
That
There's no way that I would expect to know everything that's going on in the ward without report from someone.
got
And I saw this as being a much needed step to take to include the people all over, because quite often I hear people speak of, how they saw the person come when it was time to vote, but they haven't seen him since,
right.
and that's not good. That's not good. I mean, even with the different companies that I have regular contact with those managers and the staff to let them know that I care about them,
Mhm.
and it shows what I believe we need here in Ward 8 right now.
And as I presume, they have regular contact with their customers. And so essentially, we're transitioning from excellent customer management and customer relationships to excellent constituent management and
Absolutely.
constituent relationships.
Absolutely. It
Okay.
is just plain. It's just plain as day. You got peanut butter on one side and jelly on the other, and they don't taste worth a darn individually. But if you can just put the two of them together, you can make one heck of a sandwich.
Gotcha. And also, you'll gain some weight. So, um, and with to that vein, or in that same vein, I just want to know quickly, why is it? Because it's one of, for me, it's so important that the entrepreneurs in our communities are a part of the political process. And
Mhm.
I just want to, I mean, I have my own opinions on it as to why it's so important for you to be able to come and sit uh, at, at, at the head of the table, because you've been on both sides of the table first.
Mhm.
That of being a business owner, that of being an employee, understanding how legislation, how laws, how hiring practices, how everything comes together to both affect the employer and the employee. How important is it for entrepreneurs to be involved in politics? What advantages do you have, and what do you bring to the table that otherwise we miss out on if someone hasn't had all of those experiences?
I'll tell you that the thing that just rings out over and over again from seeing and sitting with other business leaders is that the level of ideas, the number of ideas that come about. I've never been one to claim to know everything, although I have an uncle who references me as .com, but I don't know everything.
Okay.
Um, but what I am and do claim is I am a very resourceful person. As I said, my mentor taught me a long time ago, bring in the people who have the experience and hold them accountable. And so if we open the doors to ideas from everyone, and then you have the team that can sit down and analyze which will be the most efficient, effective, and ethical position to take with anything, you have, number one, you have inclusion of the people, not just one person stating how life should be for everyone.
Hmm.
I've seen how in government, those elected officials that are left unchallenged or unchecked make decisions that harm some of the people. And also understanding you can't do everything to satisfy everyone. But I do believe that if you have everyone sitting at the table, then there's no excuse of not at least trying to find a good median and negotiate, not deal make, because I don't like deal making. Deal making to me seems like, somebody's getting over on the other. You're getting something for nothing.
Okay.
And that's not true in this country. There's nothing free. I don't care how they present it.
Hmm.
Everything has a cost to it. And realistically, when we have negotiations that can include everyone involved, I think that's how we come to a happy median. Everyone's not going to get whatever they want, but it shouldn't be the lesser or the greater of just because someone's absent. And I think that I'll be pushing to have more people involved, included in the decision-making process once we've captured the concerns of the people.
Gotcha, gotcha. Thank you, Fred. Do you have hobbies or passions outside of business and politics? What are they, if you don't mind me asking? Are you a workout enthusiast, a diet enthusiast? What do you like to do?
Well, right now, I'm also a recent cancer survivor, so having the right food and educating people on eating the right foods, as I've learned over the last year and a half of treatment, and I've been on November 3rd. On November 3rd, it'll be 1 year.
Congratulations.
1 year.
Good stuff.
So cancer free, but I learned diet at that point in time was what helped save my life. It was quite honestly the one thing. It wasn't medicine. It was diet changing and eating the right foods. And so I do spend a lot of time speaking to people about the right diet now. But when you talk about the actual physical hobbies, is I love drag racing and I love fishing. Those are my favorite.
Okay.
Game one spun off of auto mechanics because of the ability to take a piece of machinery and make it outperform what it did yesterday going into tomorrow, and mastering a skill that required not just the fastest car, but there are other things that a seasoned professional race car driver does that sets him or her apart from the rest of the pack. And that's what I begin to study and apply that in my own race career. Now, I don't race anymore right now. I decided that every time that I was sitting in one of those cars, I was spending money. But when I'm sitting in one of my trucks, I'm making money. And I decided that I would be a sponsor to somebody else's dream, advertise my business on their car, and then give them a doorway into satisfying that dream by drag racing. But I love that sport. And fishing, it was the most quiet thing that I learned to do early on in life that I could go and do by myself, think, have moments and times to think while I'm waiting on this dumb fish to jump on the hook, and oftentimes the fish really showed me how dumb I was for being out there waiting on it.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
But and then the last thing was something that I thought was really, really crazy when I first looked at this sport, but it was golf. When I was younger, I thought it was the craziest thing for a man to run around and chase a little white ball on green grass all day until I actually got involved in the sport. And I took the lessons, and I won my first two of the two first place tournaments that I was in after training. That was inspired by Tiger Woods. So he's much younger than I am, but after watching him gain the many different wins in that sport, I knew that I wasn't going to be able to slam a basketball. Football, I already had my turn with football, but golf seemed to be something I've seen a lot of old guys involved in. And so I figured if I could get started early enough in that, I'd at least have a sport I could stay connected to when I get older. And those are the three: drag racing, fishing, and golf.
Drag racing, fishing, and golf. That's quite the diversification, my friend.
All right, if you only got one hole to crawl in.
That's right. That's right. That's right. That's right. I too am a fisherman.
Okay.
Get together and fish. I didn't know that, man.
Yeah. Yes, we will do that.
That's one of my passions. I love to travel and fish locally, as well as, I love going to North Carolina off the continental shelf. I could go on and on about fishing, but I think it also brings a lot of things into perspective as you're able to do it. But what I want to get into really is very quickly, how do those hobbies bring a certain harmony in your life? Because some of us get really caught up as entrepreneurs and kind of going. And it's important to understand the benefit to your other endeavors of sometimes taking a step back so that you can do something like fish or play golf where you have time to put things in perspective. How does that help you and create some sort of synergy and become a catalyst for you to be more effective, more efficient, and more successful in your other routes or lanes in life?
Well, I'll tell you, it's not a secret. It's just something that I did learn some time ago. Those other 6 states that I have companies in was because I went fishing. Um, I went fishing first and then decided I wanted to go fishing more often. And because of the way our economic tax base is set up, it's most beneficial that if I could mix in a fishing trip when I'm going down there to take care of business, then the business pays for the fishing trip instead of me paying for it. And that's what led me into looking into opportunities within those other states. And then, to take the sport of drag racing and how I ended up in Florida. Going to the Daytona was a big thing to me every year. Drag racing at NHRA events is also still a big thing to me. But being able to travel there and then also become a vendor at some of these venues was another thing. So I get to come there and provide the service and be a part of the event as opposed to watching it. And it just grew. It just grew to be another thing that caused me to look for more than just what I was there for. How many people in the area, every time I land in a different state, and to set up office or business opportunities there. The next thing that came to mind is how many returning citizens do we have here? How many unemployed people do we have in this region? And what can we do? What kind of services can we bring in this region? If it's not of what I already have, what can we bring to the people here? And that came from my military experience. Again, because what goes on in Alaska is different than what goes on in Hawaii. And you got to find out what the people need, what services are needed in that area, and then set up a business model around that so that you can get more people employed locally.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, Fred, I've certainly learned a heck of a lot from you today.
Thank you.
Certainly concur with your reasoning and explanations as to why, after having such an illustrious career with regard to your business endeavors, that you are now looking to help your community. And let's just be clear, this isn't something you have to do.
No.
This
People
is
tell
something
me all the time. My friends asked me in the beginning when I first announced that I was going to run for a city council seat, what in the world are you doing that for? And I recognize that for far too often and far too long, our elected officials were being caught later involved in things that were not right for the people. There were no accountability measures in place that was holding people truly accountable for their actions when they had negative impacts on the people around. So, I stand before you as someone who can't be bought as a slave or sold as a slave to any developer, any prime contractor, as what I've seen happen here in Washington, D.C. for far too long. And it was going to take Fred Hill, not somebody like me. It was going to take Fred Hill for someone who I have my own money. I don't need to negotiate a deal to include me, the future, in that deal. I want to negotiate for the residents. And I learned a long time ago, if I help enough people get what they want, ultimately I'll get what I want.
Gotcha. Fred, I want to thank you for joining me today. You've been a blessing to share your experience, your knowledge with me and everyone else who will be privileged enough to view this. So I want to say thank you, sir. I wish
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
Thanks for tuning in to Chronicles of Ambition. Visit our Chronicles of Ambition YouTube page for all of the latest.